and in that we discussed about the revealed law, and we then discussed about natural law, and after that we discussed about the revealed law, and inside that revealed law we discussed about the old law. Now the last part which is remaining is the new law. Okay, let's go to new law. Okay. Now, you know that, okay, God has now revealed his laws through Moses and through prophets. Through prophets, all the laws, which is like the old moral law, it can be ceremonial law or it can be judicial law, all the laws God has given to the people. Now, as we discussed, all these laws went into their head and then they started working through the head, and they find it as a burden and they become a slave for those laws, and it becomes like a bondage for them. Now God is seeing a need that, okay, these laws which are there in the mind is not sufficient. They have to move it into their heart, and these laws has to be from the heart with love. They have to do all the things, and that will be the most effective way of following our Lord's instruction. So he gave to Jeremiah a prophecy. Okay, and that prophecy is a very important prophecy which we remember even today. Every mass we remember that prophecy. What is that prophecy? If you go to Jeremiah 31 verses 33, it says about this prophecy which is called as the new covenant. The new covenant. What is that new covenant? We'll hear. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their heart, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. The moment God has decided to move the law from the mind to the heart, now people is becoming his own people. People is now starting to follow the Lord, the follow God from their heart with love. So there is a loving attraction between between his people and God, and this is done through the law, which is now internalized from within through in the heart, and that is called as the new law. And this new law actually got into picture after Jesus Christ came into this world. And when is this? When is that happened? Jesus Christ came into the world and proclaimed the gospel. And in his Sermon of Mount, he gave this new law. In his Sermon of Mount, if you see the Sermon of Mount, especially in Matthew chapter 5, verse 5 onwards to 7, Jesus gives two important things. One is the beatitude. Second is the new law. Okay, these are the two things which he gave. What is a beatitude? A beatitude is a promise of Jesus Christ towards the kingdom of heaven. And all these promises, what he has given as beatitude, is fulfilled by following this new law. Okay, so he gave the concept of how it will be if you follow this law from your heart. That is the beatitude. And what are the things which you have to follow is the new law what he gave through the Sermon on the Mount. If you really see the nature of these laws, they are again based on the two basic principles. One is love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and love your neighbor. And this is originally the intent of even natural law. If you really see, just turn back your pages and then go to the natural law. Law is also based on the two pillars, which is loving God and loving neighbor. And the same thing is even now proclaimed, but now it is very explicit. Jesus tells it very aloud, very very clearly, saying that you have to follow what I say, because when you start following what I say, this law of the nature which was there inside it gets into your heart. It will be written on the walls of your heart, and it becomes easy for you to follow it. It becomes now a law of love, a law of a good news, that okay, God is now going to work with you in grace, and then bring the best out of you through love. And so it is not going to make your life miserable as a slave, as we used to be when we are in Israel, when we are in the desert. Now it is a law of freedom. When we really do it out of love, it becomes a law of freedom. So the law of the new law can also be called as law of gospel or law of good news, law of Christ because it is given by Christ, law of love because it is induced by love, law of grace because it fetches the grace to for us to follow the law, and law of freedom because it's not going to set us into bondage but set us into freedom. So all these law of gospel, law of Christ, law of love, law of grace, and law of freedom are all referring to this new law which Jesus Christ gave in the Mount of it's a Sermon on the Mount. As again, I want to reiterate that Jesus gave two things on the Sermon on the Mount, very, very primarily. One is the Beatitudes, which is the promise of towards his kingdom, towards the kingdom of heaven. What, how will the life be in the kingdom of heaven? That is the Beatitudes. Blessed are they. All these blessed are going to be there in the kingdom of God. Okay, so that is the promise. And to fulfill the promise, what are the things which people have to do is the new law, what is been given to us. And this new law is basically, we can summarize it in one commandment. In John 15, verses 12, if you see, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. When we consider Jesus is love and Jesus is God, Jesus loved us so much that he gave his own life for our redemption. And similarly, we are supposed to love one another with the love of God, with the love of Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is the commandment which is center for this new love, for this new law. And this law is nothing but when we follow this new law, we are going to fulfill the old law. We are going to fulfill the law of the nature, that is a human natural law, and it is going to take us from from fulfilling it out of mind to fulfilling out of heart with love. Okay, so it is going to transform our heart. You remember, evil came into our life in our heart, and Jesus is now nailing the evil out by filling it through love, these new laws. Okay, last session we discussed about evil sneaking into the heart of the angel. Right now, Jesus is replacing that evil into love, into through his new law, which is written in the heart, and then redeeming us through that. Okay, so basically, the new law proceeds to reform the heart, which is the center of all the human acts, so that the evil will go away, and we will be able to peacefully implement the law of the Lord without much strain, because the work of the law is now coming as grace to us through various sacraments. So this is what is the new law, what we are going to discuss. So as we see that the Mosaic law, which is in our mind, is now taken to our heart as a new law, and this is the new covenant what we have discussed. And now we are going to the next part, which is the new law, which is the fulfillment, which is the refinement, which is surpasses and leads the old law to its perfection. And then we have the new law is the fulfillment of the Beatitudes. And also it is the new law that proceeds to transform our heart, which is the root of the human act. So this is what we call it as a new law, which is the law which we are supposed to follow right now. Now, holistically, if you really see, this is a structure of all the law. If I just even break the old law into these three parts, if you go to the next thing, if you see, this is the complete structure. We have the eternal law. We have the eternal law, which can be classified into two categories. One is a natural law, another is a revealed law. And in revealed law, you have two categories. One is the old law, another is the new law. In old law, we have three categories. One is the old moral law, the ceremonial law, and the judicial law. Now, if you really see as total, okay, We see some of the laws are immutable, that is, doesn't depend on time, it is going to be there forever. Some of the laws are mutable or temporal in nature. Mutable means it ceases to exist after a period of time, and we know which are the things which are immutable and which are the things which are mutable. And if you really see, law which are more moral based are all immutable. For example, natural law is immutable, old moral law is immutable, new law is immutable. So all these things are immutable, which means that they are not going to go away at all, and we always have to follow it. Irrespective of which period we are in, we are supposed to follow it. Certain things are mutable, which means that it is going to go away. So those laws are applicable to certain part of the age, like ceremonial law, like judicial law, like ecclesiastical law, and they will be followed for a certain period of time. After that, their applicability is not there. Now we have to really see, like the Israel people, we should not focus our mind only on this external, externally showing, externally revealing laws alone, which is like ceremonial laws, ecclesiastical laws, or judicial laws. We should be able to internalize things and cleanse us from within. The cleansing of our heart, the cleansing of our heart or from within, can happen only through the new law. So we have to follow the new law, that is Jesus Christ, whatever he has told us through the Sermon on the Mount. It is non-mutable, it is immutable. So we need to be really careful there. So what we have to do is that all these parts, which are all important as moral laws, has to be followed without any compromise. And we should not just stay focused only on the ceremonial and judicial law or ecclesiastical law. We should also, we should really give more importance to moral based laws, which are natural law, the old law, the new law, and the old moral law, and things like that. So Catholic Church has given this catechism very profoundly. In fact, if we are able to understand this, we will be very clear that which one has to follow for all our life, which one has to be followed for a period or the age what we are in, and which one we can overlook it. Okay, so with this, we are closing this particular topic. You will be having 3 questions now. Please go ahead and then discuss, and then we will go to the final closure.